you guys, this is Irene. I wanted to make this video because I was inspired to do so by a conversation that I was having with one of my commenters, and it just got me thinking about female submission, the challenges I have faced in engaging in my submission with my partners, and the sort of the pitfalls and the dangers to women who choose to take a more traditional road to male-female interaction. And so I was going to take notes and kind of go from those, but I decided just to do this just off the top of my head, just to keep it not so contrived but honest. So the first thing I will say is there are two types of submissive women. There are women who were, for lack of a better word, bred or raised to be submissive, meaning that's what you saw portrayed in your family life, and that's just the natural order of things according to your worldview based on upbringing and environment. And then there are women who are not submissive because they had that modeled, but they have the desire to change themselves to be more compatible with their male counterparts. And so these two women each face unique challenges and each have strengths, but at the end of the day, we're kind of all in the same boat together. For a woman who is kind of bred for submission, a big challenge for us tends to be that we approach male-female interaction on the whole taking a submissive stance. And unfortunately, all men are not good, and all men don't know how to manage submission, even if they desire it, and they don't know, they don't have healthy attitudes towards male-female interactions. And so you have to really be careful and kind of step outside of your own comfort zone to assert yourself, to say no, to not give every man submission, but give every man respect initially, and allow the submission to be earned. A lot of people say respect is something that should be earned. However, I feel that respect is something that you give and a person loses. But submission is something that men have to earn from the women that they're in authority over. And they do that by proving themselves to be good leaders. For women who are not naturally submissive, your unique challenge is that you have to know to fall back, right? And the trust issue is harder for you because it is a lot. It really is a lot to depend on a person to make right decisions, to be your leader, to trust them. Submission requires full transparency. So just, there are things that we keep to ourselves that we don't want to share with other people. Just breaking through that barrier and not thinking that's going to be used against you or used to hurt you, that is difficult. That's difficult just for submissive women just in general. So with that said, let me go ahead, now that we've identified like the two types of submissive women and our unique challenges, let's go into what this looks like and what we should be looking for in men and the barriers that we may face in our submission. So there are different types of male leaders. There's the ideal sort of male leader, and he leads with a firm hand. This will be a man who will not call you out of your name. They're very unlikely to yell. They're very unlikely to engage you if you're being emotional. They are very likely to dismiss you if your behavior is as such that they feel that you are not moldable, teachable, or obedient. Strangely, they are the best men to have, but they're also the hardest to adjust to because it's easy to read that behavior as cold, but what it truly is controlled. It's also hard to temper yourself. These are men that won't do a lot of talking. They may give a simple instruction like calm down. And our instinct is to not calm down, because we feel challenged. And then they will cease engagement until you've obeyed that first command. And so that can come off, especially if you're used to dysfunction, as someone who doesn't care about you because they refuse to engage you. You might feel that they don't really love you because arguments and strife are not something that they are willing to indulge. These men tend to desire peace in their home, and they are not typically the kind who are willing to mold you. So you kind of have to come a ready package to men like that. Once they peep that, your mindset is not in the right place, these are men, like I said, that will dismiss you. So you might not stand much of a chance with the ideal leader if you are not ready to be instructed, if you don't take a hint very easily, if you expect abuse or negativity to be a sign of caring and leadership, these men won't be the men for you, but they are the ideal men to have. And how you know they do love and care for you is that they take that first step of engagement, right? So you are doing something ridiculous and they don't just get up and walk away. They might say, calm down. They might say, I'm going to go and I'll talk to you when you're in a better place. The fact that they even give you that much leeway, because that's all the leeway they're normally willing to give, lets you know that they care. They care enough to not let you self-destruct, but they care about themselves more to not get involved in an unhealthy situation with an unruly woman. Another type of leader is a man that feels himself to be very dominant, but is really a man with insecurity. And these men will take a leadership style that includes a lot of berating of you. So let's say that you are an attractive woman. This will be the man that points out every flaw in you. He won't say you look nice. He'll say, he'll point out what's wrong with your hair, what's wrong with your mouth, what's wrong with your makeup, what's wrong with your body. And it's interesting, the kind of go-to function when you're taking a submissive stance is then to try to improve those things about yourself. So this could read like, this man makes me want to be better. Like I always feel like I have to bring my A game to the table. You might always be on edge when you're dealing with him because you want him to be pleased with you. But it's very unhealthy. See, the former man that I talked about, you'll also want to bring your A game with him because he commands and demands it, but not because your self-esteem is being knocked down and you are trying to avoid rebuff. And so there is a difference there. A man that has to tear you down in order to have control over you will create in you a weak person. And those situations can quickly turn into abusive situations. So you want to be wary of that. Now, some men don't know they're doing it. Here's the thing. Nobody's perfect, right? So if you come to a man and you go, it's hurtful to me, when you speak to me that way, could you please not, call me out of my name, or, I don't respond well to that. Because all men aren't perfect, he will self-correct. But generally, men like that will tell you that you really don't have the right to be making requests to them. This is the type of man who believes that your happiness should be completely contingent on his happiness. So in other words, what you want and your personal needs don't matter. What should bring you happiness is purely the service of him. Now, this is true to a point, right? We should get pleasure from engaging in a relationship with our partner. We should get pleasure from pleasing our partner. But we also are human beings and we have needs that need to be met. So a man that wants to completely disregard you as a human being and you are purely there as decoration and to serve him is a man that doesn't actually care about you. And you as a human being and as a woman are no more valuable to him than the next woman who will pander to his need to be worshipped and idolized. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with revering your man, but placing yourself in an unhealthy situation, there's a great deal of problem with that. The next type of man is a man that really demands submission, but he really doesn't know what to do with it. This is a man that's very good at telling you what place you ought to be in. They have a lot of issues dealing with women who are intelligent. They have a lot of problems dealing with any sort of act they feel is insubordination. But see, insubordination can read to these men very differently. So, for example, I did a vlogcast with O'Shea, and a brother pointed out at the end that I had, he said I was basically being disobedient and not submissive. And that's how he read it, right? So the reality is I had said, I hear what you're saying, but then what I would ask in return, or not necessarily return, but what I would ask to reinforce what you're suggesting is that our male counterparts support our behavior by reinforcing it when they interact with women. Hold on. Okay, I'm so sorry. Do you know that there are literally a bajillion bugs where I live? And one very tiny little flying something got into the house, and out of my entire house, it decided to come and fly like right here. Anyway, sorry. So anyway, this young brother was saying, he was calling it out as insubordination. The thing is that we need to be able to voice our feelings and opinions. So a man who never wants to be questioned or will not take your feedback, those are the type of men that really don't know how to be leaders, right? They think that they're infallible. You know what I mean? They think, what could you have to add to the conversation? If you speak up and add anything. So, for example, you know, the man that was talking, he was like, you know, women need to go to their corner and self-correct each other. Men need to go to their corner and self-correct each other. And I said, I agree with that. But since in reality, you know, we have to interact with each other, not necessarily on a sexual level, right? But just in life, you know, men and women, we bump into each other everywhere. It's also helpful if when men are interacting with women that they are showing their preference for women who are behaving correctly. And so that was not me being insubordinate. That was just me asking for an additional level to what the command was. And so the young brother, he read it as insubordination. And so a lot of times men who believe in submission but don't know how to be dominant, they will read any input from you as insubordination. And this is a dangerous sort of man to deal with in their own right. You could definitely do it and try to grow with them. But, you know, as women, we have to be very protective of ourselves, because once you've made that commitment to being in submission, it's hard to double back on that when you see the situation is not the best situation. So just know that you still have a voice, right? Men who are leading us, they typically pick very carefully their women. So they will normally pick you because they think that you have a good head on your shoulders. They are interested in hearing what you have to say. Now, you could speak up and he go, I hear you, but yeah, no, we're not going to do it that way. And then it is what it is, right? But he will still hear you. And more so, he responds to you, right? So he might even go, I see what you're saying, however, X, Y, and Z. And so that is more what it looks like. However, a man that wants submission but has not really had it modeled to him how leadership goes might feel very challenged, no matter how softly and gently you come to them. The other thing I will say is that submission is not about, again, not having a voice. It's a lot about how you approach it. So when you are approaching dealing with your male, you need to take a soft approach to speaking to them. So you don't want to present yourself as a challenge. And what I mean as a challenge is you don't want to be perceived as challenging them. You want to be perceived as bringing your opinion and thought process to the table. And that has everything to do in your demeanor and behavior. If you are posing as an aggressor or as an equal, and I know this could be triggering to some women, but you can't pose yourself as an equal. You are equal in value to men. You might even be more valuable than men. But we are not equal in status or power. And so when we speak to them, we need to be mindful of that. Now, I know you guys are going to go, Irene, we've seen you really get live with some men. That's because I'm not putting myself in a place of submission to them. When I do that, I'm letting it be known, this isn't happening. I don't view you as a person that it is correct or safe or pragmatic for me to listen to. And, you know, people could argue that I should not do that, but I do, you know, the person who's in authority over me doesn't have a problem with my behavior. So I guess that's what matters, like at the end of the day, because I approach everybody initially with respect. Like I said, because I think respect is just a given until they do something to have me have to withdraw that respect. Now, with that said, you really have to vet the person that you're with. So let's talk about, we talked about submission. We've talked about the type of submissive women that there are. We've talked about the type of male leaders that there are. Now let's talk about what it looks like to have your submission earned. Okay. So when you're approached by an ideal man, what he will try to do, and be careful because the second type of male leader, which is the one that will berate and manipulate you, they come at this the same way as the ideal type of leader. And that is, they're going to want to know your whole life story, dude. I'm telling you, they're looking in your cabinets. They're looking at how you dress and carry yourself, how you talk, how you respond. They are analyzing you. They are analyzing you, both types, the ideal and the one that's the one that you want to avoid. They're really analyzing you. They're seeing what makes you tick. They're asking you questions just to see what you're going to say. They're doing stuff just to see what your response is going to be. They're going to push you just to see how you handle that pressure, because they're analyzing you. But you need to be analyzing them as well. Okay, you need to be looking at when you give them information, what they do with that information. You need to be looking at, are they demanding full submission for you up front? Big red flag, y'all. When a guy wants you to just be submissive to him off top, that is like a red flag. Like, run for the hills, okay? This little thing, I cannot, it's so small. I'm sorry. That thing was attacking me, okay? When a man wants, I guess it agreed with me. When a man wants you to be submissive to them, like, just off top, just up front, that is a big red flag. Like, back away from that dude, you know? Your respectfulness and your general demeanor as posing as a woman should be acceptable enough. You should not have to, you shouldn't have to obey everything he says, you know, right away. He shouldn't just expect you just to not have, you know, any pushback right away. And you need to be testing that too. You know, not playing games, but genuinely testing, asking him questions, seeing where his mind is. All this before sexual interaction. Okay, all this before sexual interaction, because what really happens is women lead with their heart, and they feel like my heart is there, so let me give you my body because I know that my body is what y'all find valuable, right? The problem with that is that once you've delivered your body over, you open yourself up to so many things. You open yourself up to pregnancy. You open yourself up to that higher level of emotional attachment. You've effectively weakened your position. Just the sexual act itself is an act of submission on the woman's part. Doesn't matter what position you get in, like that's like the ultimate act of submission to a person. A lot of times when you are in an unhealthy relationship with a person, how they will determine if they still have control over you is to see if you'll still open your legs for them. You know what I mean? Because it is an act of submission. So, you know, you have to make him work for that. And at the end of the day, a man who has self-control, and this is a big one, you're looking for a man who has control over himself. If you could trigger him, he's not the one, all right? You don't need somebody that you could trigger. See, men that get triggered and emotional, they are dangerous. That's the man that'll pop you upside your head. You know what I mean? That's the man that'll be calling you out of your name, all kinds of things. You know, that's the man, and men do this, that'll be trying to drag you into court on some crazy stuff. That's the man that'll be a stalker and try to kill you. You know, like, if you could trigger him, he's not the one. If he is, you know, showing a lot of emotionality, he's not the one. If he's yelling, he's not the one. You know, anything, like I said, a lot of times we read masculinity, which is a lot of self-control and unwillingness to let you push them to act any kind of way, as negative. But that is self-control. And what you want above everything in a partner when you are taking a submissive stance is that they be self-controlled, self-regulating. Self-controlled and self-regulating. I did a video which you saw a lot of males coming under on men that go their own way. And one of the things that I pointed out is they lack self-control. And men like that are scary, dude. You need them to go their own way. If you are highly emotional, if he's willing to yell at you, if he's willing to call you out your name, if he will put hands on you, he lacks self-control. You know what I mean? At that point, you're in control. Like, when you can trigger a person, you're in control. There's a saying, you know, the person that loses their cool first, or the person that keeps their cool wins. The person that loses their cool first is the weaker party. You know what I mean? And you don't want your man to be the weaker party in the situation. It might be cute and fun and entertaining to play around with a man who you can manipulate with your vagina or with your vernacular, who you can set off and get to make moves. But see, as far as like long-term partnership and healthy submission and a male and female dynamic for a lasting relationship, you need somebody who is controlled over himself and is able to talk you off the ledge. Because y'all, you guys know that we get very, very emotional, okay? And it's okay. Like, that's part of our womanhood. That emotionality in us is what makes us very empathic and nurturing, good mothers and good partners for our men. We balance each other out. Like, we both can't be in the relationship being emotional and uncontrolled. Only one of us could take that role. And you and I, as women, we've already got that role. So if your man is not the polar opposite of you in the way he carries himself and behavior, that's not the one to be submitting to. You know, submission is not just about doing everything you're told, not having a voice, you know, and all that kind of stuff. It is literally about being pragmatic and wise in your choice in partner, and you know, putting yourself in a position where you are in a healthy dynamic that helps you blossom and grow as a woman. and that enables you to model a good behavior and relationship dynamic for your children or those in your community. You should feel safe with your man. He should not be a one that feels that, you know, bravado and machismo needs to be led with. This is not the dude that needs to step to every single person. They will have a cool and collected head, and as a person in submission to him, you need to know when to fall back. You know what I mean? Like, that can be a very, very much a challenge for us, because as women, you kind of have to, you often have to stand for yourself. You know what I mean? And having a relationship where you shut your mouth and fall back can be a challenge. You know, we tend to want to get the last word. We tend to want to talk. We tend to want to do those things. And there are times and places for that. Do you know what I mean? But not in your personal relationship with your man. When he says it's a done deal and this discussion is over, it's a done deal. And the discussion is over. And so just dealing with your inner conflict, you know what I mean? Because it's in our nature to be rebellious as human beings, not just women, but men and women in general. We're rebellious by nature. When you see your children, if you have children, they're rebellious by nature, you know? And so quelling that rebellion, that is a difficult thing to do, but it's like a necessary thing to do. It's something that we absolutely have to master in order to be in a properly submissive state. So I would just encourage you guys, you know, to not look at submission as a form of weakness. This is not being barefoot and pregnant and not having a say. I feel like in media, and this is why media is so dangerous, every time they portray a submissive woman, she's kind of a dinglehead, she's pregnant, she's in the house. Let me tell you, first of all, being pregnant and in the house is not negative, okay? Like, you know, don't allow your view of your own womanhood to be colored. If you're blessed enough to have a man that will give you children and allow you to stay home and raise your babies, then you are a very lucky woman. You're not being oppressed in any way, shape, or form. If you're lucky enough to have a man who will hear you speak but has the ability to make that final choice, that's a beautiful thing. And so we have to have a healthy attitude toward our submission. We have to have a healthy attitude for seeing that modeled and modeling that for young women. We have to try to dispense with, especially if you didn't grow up with the example of submission, try to dispense with the negative connotations that we have for it and put yourself in a place that is safe to be submissive, because nothing does more damage to a woman than to really try to give 100% to an individual who is undeserving of it and have him take advantage of her genuine attempt to position herself as a woman. But don't be jaded by that, you know? Just pick more wisely next time. You know, up your game. And in doing that, you will attract the right type of men. You will see the red flags and know when to walk away from the situation. I think I was kind of, I don't know, I might have been a little all over the place. And I'll probably make a more organized video on this topic. But I just really wanted to just discuss it just in general, because when, like I said, when I made that Males Going Your Own Way video, a lot of those men were talking about deceiving women just to get in their pants, even though, you know, they don't really want women. And that makes me fearful for women who are healthy-minded, because we really have to know how to vet men so that we are not placed in a compromising position with people who are toxic, dangerous, and broken. And so embrace what we are, but protect yourself and be mindful of the type of men that are out there and vet them. vet them carefully, be meticulous about it, and don't give up all of what you have to offer until you are sure this individual is worth it. And most importantly, whether commitment to you looks like marriage or commitment to you looks another way, know that if that person is not willing to make a commitment to you as a human being, that that is not a person that's for you. You know, you deserve, as a woman, you deserve that security. You deserve for somebody to say, this person is mine and I'm taking responsibility for her, period. And if a man's not willing to give that to you, then next, it's time to move on. Don't get stuck in a cycle, 10, 15 years in with a man who doesn't still feel that you're worth that. You know what I mean? Giving you his time is not equivalent to giving you his heart and his leadership on a permanent basis. So with that said, I gotta go, and I will talk to you guys later.